afternoon, Bills fans. It is Eric Turner with Cover One. I'm joined by Jon today on Thanksgiving. How you doing today, Jon?
Doing good. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and obviously your family, man. I haven't seen you guys in a while, and I'm hoping to come home soon, maybe after Christmas sometime in January to visit you and the fam.
I'll love to see you, man. It's weather's starting to turn a little bit, so we're in that prime football weather right now.
Definitely, and there are a few games on today. It is Thanksgiving, so there are, I think, 2 or 3 games on today. Minnesota's playing Detroit right now. But I want to jump into an interview that Howard Simon and Jeremy White did on WGR with Doug Whaley yesterday. I'm not sure if you got to catch that, but I'm going to, I pulled up some clips and some video to go with it, Jon. And he discussed several things, first being Tyrod Taylor and evaluating him with all the injuries that he's had on offense. He also talked about, Ronald Darby's struggles. Were you able to take a look at that yet, or is this going to be your first time viewing it?
I caught little bits and pieces of it.
Okay.
But in totality, I haven't heard the whole thing. But there's certainly some good sound clips out of this interview for sure.
Definitely, and he discusses Taylor's game versus the Bengals, and he was 19 of 27 for 166 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. So it was, a mediocre game, but a game that was quite typical of his, season. It's one of those things. He's not blowing us away with his passing, but he's doing enough with his legs to, extend plays and even just run the ball and scramble to help the offense move the chains.
Now, Eric, let me ask you this real quick before we get into the interview. Now you rattled off those stats and then you followed it up by saying a mediocre game. Can you just read those stats off to me one more time from last week?
All right, he was 19 of
For
27,
Taylor?
166 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception.
I mean, mediocre to me. That's not a good game. I mean, the completion percentage isn't bad, but I mean, again, you're still under 200 yards passing. You're no touchdowns, a pick. The thing is, he's for whatever reasons, however he does that, he still keeps the game close,
right?
And he still keeps us in the game. So, to me, if you look at those stats, as a objective fan or what have you, and you see that, you would think, wow, these guys must have struggled. But then you look at the final score and we win. And it's interesting to see because he really is not your prototypical quarterback. Like you
Right.
can't even box him in with the rest of the guys out in the league because his game is just so different.
Right, you're right, and it's again. I think it has to do with play calling and those injuries. And we'll cut away to Doug Whaley here because he did a great job of being a scout and now a GM. He's seen this before. He's seen these kind of struggles, especially I'm sure in Pittsburgh they handled Ben Roethlisberger the same way. Just relied on the run game and play it safe and have him rely on that quarterback to extend plays, and that's what we're doing with Tyrod. So I mean.
Yeah,
Whaley's gone through it, so I'm going to play a clip here of his evaluation, how he's evaluating this year.
I mean, obviously he's going to be judged on our record, and we're 5-5, and that's not. I mean, that's right in the middle of the pack. But I think there's a lot of football to be played, and he's done some very good things. And like you pointed out, the Seattle game, there are some throws that he's wanted to have back. And just like I think everybody on the team, he's going to strive to get better, and he's, I'm sure, his harshest critic. And I think there's going to be some games or some throws or even some plays he's like, I should have done that better. But he's got a positive attitude. He's got the team behind his back. He's got the organization behind his back. And we just want to finish strong these last 6 games.
There was a big piece that he said there, Eric. The organization is behind him. The team is behind him. So with knowing that, if you're Tyrod, that gives you the comfort level to go out and play your game and not necessarily have to press per se.
Right.
Because you're getting your blessings from the GM, through the radio and internally. So that's got to be huge for his just psyche, and hopefully, we'll see him take that next step and being able to finish a game down score, what have you. That's the next step in his development, as
Right.
far as I'm concerned, because the rest of the game is there.
Right, and he doesn't press, and we talked about this, like, I feel like every week. He doesn't press, but, I don't think that's him being coached not to, press it or make those tough throws. I think that's inherent in him. I think he's very much the type of quarterback that would rather escape the pocket and use his legs than throw a ball in a tight window and possibly risk turning it over. I mean, right here, if you can see the play, John, I mean, you see Clay go down the seam and run the post route, and he is open. I know from the quarter, I don't know if I have the tight camera angle, which I don't, but from the tight camera angle, I asked this week, I go, does Tyrod have issues with his depth perception? Because from the pocket, the clip looks a lot different. It looks like this guy is in the window, and I don't know if Tyrod can actually see over the top of the line, obviously, but the
Hmm.
depth between this safety and this safety with Clay sneaking in behind it. So, um, I mean, I've seen several throws like this year that I don't know if it's just his depth perception or what. And Whaley alluded to it. There are going to be throws. Every quarterback misses throws, right, John?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously, and but again, every quarterback needs to make throws too,
Yes.
and throws like that need to be had, and you know, and that might go towards the lack of production from Clay over the last year and a half, is him being open and just Tyrod not being able to get him the ball. So,
Right.
he needs to make those throws, Eric, and he needs to at least attempt those throws. Because right now I'm not even seeing really the attempts to throw that ball. So
Right.
it's one thing to not be able to make the throw or what have you, but I want to at least see him attempt it, and
Right.
that way I at least feel I have a chance to have a big game through the air.
Right. So, and Tyrod, part of his struggles this year are the lack of weapons and injuries. And he was asked about that and how Doug Whaley was asked about that on WGR about how, that affects the evaluation of Tyrod. So listen in.
I think it's something that you take into consideration, but as we always say, injuries cannot be a hindrance, but it also you take it in the equation. And
So, I mean, like you said, it's something they have to take into account, right, John? I mean, he's got what, 6 games left to prove that he's worthy of, getting to that next tier of the contract. I mean, you have to take in the injuries into account, right?
You do, and as far as the development of Tyrod, is that what you're asking
Yeah.
specifically? Yeah, so you do. Um, but as Tyrod, as the game manager, as the captain of the team, the person that should know the offense inside and out, um, whoever's on the field, he should be able to get them the ball.
Right.
There is going to be instances where he's going to be not on the same page as maybe a guy that's been entrusted into the lineup, off short notice,
Right.
sure. But at the end of the day, you still have to make plays, and Doug Whaley and company in the scouting department have to find the guys to bring in to make his job easier, so that way he can still continue to grow and develop as a quarterback, regardless of who's on the field.
Right. And part of being a quarterback is not just obviously knowing where to go with the ball, but there are a lot of things, pre-snap, and Whaley touched upon it on WGR about, one of the things that Tyrod has improved on is command. And of course, that happens pre-snap, post-snap, whatever, in the huddle. And listen in what he had to say about that, because to me, I totally agree with him here. But is that Tyrod improving, or is that the coaching giving him the responsibility of commanding that huddle, commanding, having him find the matchup advantage on the offense? You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
All right. So,
I mean, it's probably a little bit of both, but yeah, go ahead.
right.
command of the team, not only on the field but off the field, and just the way he looks more comfortable in the pocket when he's ready to take off. It's decisive, but you see him hanging a little longer, hoping some guys can come available and make that open throw.
So he says it. I mean, he is hanging in the pocket a little more. He does look. I mean, from snap to attempt, it does look like he is trying to keep his eyes downfield. But a lot of people do say on a weekly basis, he does also at times leave the pocket too early.
He does, and for the most part, though, that's really in some instances that's a good thing,
Right.
for the for the fact that he's able to pick up. I don't know how many key first downs he's picked up with
Yeah.
his feet this year. Like, it's been a lot, and um, not to say that I necessarily want to continue to see him do that, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, unless, of course, there was an opportunity to make a play down the field with his arm for a bigger gain, and he's just missing that. So, yes, we may be getting the 5, 6 plus and maybe a first down, but
Right.
we're missing out on a huge play. So that's what we got to think about. And he has to realize, like, okay, yes, I can run right now, but if I hang in here just another second longer, a half second longer, I might be able to hit the guy deep downfield and have a huge play instead of just a small gain. So
Right.
as long as his game, like Whaley said, if he continues to get more comfortable in the pocket, then his passing statistics can only go up. You would
Right.
think, right? I mean, I don't know.
Right. And he may, like Whaley alluded to, he does look, like he wants to stay in the pocket more. He's not as apt to run. I think this year he's had to, just because of the pressure that he's faced a lot this year, because he's been under pressure a lot. He's, one of the our offensive line has given up, top 10 pressures this year. So I mean, thank God we have him and his legs to extend plays. But on that
Right.
particular clip, there wasn't anyone open, and that has to do with the injuries. There's no one separating, and you know what? He rolled to his left. He put a little move on the linebacker and got out there and got the first down for us, and that extends plays. As bad as we are on, 3 and outs, those are the kind of plays that, you kind of lose sight of, because you're so focused on him as a passer that you don't focus on him as a quarterback overall, and just moving moving chains with his legs.
James, yep.
So the other,
And
obviously,
that's his game, Eric.
right,
His like I said 100 times, he's never probably going to be either a 300 plus passer week in and week out. It's just not going to happen. I think because he's so used to running, he's always ran, that those particular plays that might take you to the 200, 250, 300-yard passing games, you're losing with him picking up the 50 to 60 yards of rushing.
right. Yeah, and not having Sammy Watkins is a big loss. It's been a big loss all season. But he did practice this week. There's some footage I'm going to show here in a second with him practicing his first day back at practice. And to me, he looks still. I don't think he's ready. Honestly, I see a couple of the breaks that he makes on some of these routes. I don't know if it's maybe the weather or the footing there on the turf, but to me, I don't know if he's ready this week. Would you play him this week if if medically they clear him? Would you play him this week?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, especially, Woods is out.
Right.
And a lot of chatter this week I'm hearing is like, oh, well, we're playing Jacksonville this week. Let's sit them another week and let them get right. And it's like, listen, I don't care who we're playing, because we can get beat any week.
We're not that good enough to
if
just sit players, right?
No, we have to play our horses if they're medically available. If the player feels he's good enough to go, I don't necessarily need him at 100%.
Right.
I'll take a 90% Sammy Watkins. I think that's better than most other players is 100%. So, yes, I'm playing him if he's medically cleared and if he feels that he can contribute. So, yes, I'm playing him.
All right. And Whaley gives an update here on his on Watkins and his CT scan that he had the other day. So listen in.
I think he got a CT scan a couple days ago, maybe at the beginning of the week, and right now we are in full anticipation that he'll be limited for practice today. I think that's going to depend on him and how he feels, so that's why we throw that limited designation on him. We'll see how he progresses, not only before practice, but during practice, and the biggest thing is going to be after practice and the next day, how his foot responds. Sometimes you have to save players from themselves. We got to make sure the medical guys say he's okay, but if Sammy says he's okay and he goes out there and he doesn't perform the way we think he should look or the way we think he should perform, then we're going to have some questions. And again, like I said earlier, a lot of times these guys are competitors, so they want to get out there no matter what. And we got to save them from themselves, because we don't want Sammy just for this game. We want Sammy for a long time.
As you saw at the end of the clip, I'm not sure if that was planned for him. Obviously, he's still limited, but at the end of that clip, they put him on the bike, and he was just working on bike for most of practice. So I don't know. To me, it doesn't look like he is going to play this week. But I'm with you, man. I mean, if they clear him, why not play him? Even just him on the field is going to shift coverage.
Right.
It's going to help the offense.
Decoy, right. Even if he's a decoy, that might even just help, like you said, swaying the coverage to his side a little bit, open some stuff up, other places. So, yeah, I get the whole, save him from himself and protecting him for the future and this and that. But, Eric, I need to win today.
Right.
I need to win now. I'm not worried about next year, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm worried about today, this season, this next game. And that's all I'm worried about. So if he can contribute this week and he's medically cleared, then I'm playing him. Because at the end of the day, Eric, we're at 16 years going on 17 possibly without a playoff berth.
Right.
Like, we can't keep looking ahead, and it'll be 20 years if we keep doing that, Eric.
Right.
So we have to, if we have the opportunity to play a player that's going to help us win today or this week, what have you, then by all means do that.
Right. And week 12, and you're right. It's a tough decision, but you know what? For me, if I'm the coach, and I mean, who knows if his job's on the line or whatnot, but you need to worry about this game. I mean, it's a game by game basis. And this week, week 12, we're playing the Jags, and that's what you have to worry about. And right now, the Jags, yeah, are they the team they were last year? No, they're not. But it's still the NFL, and on any given Sunday, you can lose. And their record, is 2-8. And offensively, they've struggled, and that was their strength last year. Defensively, you can see, right now they're the 7th ranked defense, only giving up 322 yards a game. So you got to worry about this game, and so Sammy, if he can play, I'd play him, even if it's only 20% of snaps, 30% of snaps. He'll make a difference on those plays against a Jacksonville defense that, they're ranked 7th, but they're up 5th. They're ranked 5th in passing yards, so they don't give up many passing yards. So Watkins would make a difference there, don't you think?
100%. I mean, they're probably better than their record suggests. I'm not sure where the regression is for this particular team. I haven't watched every game of theirs, but I know that I think their offensive line is been giving them some problems with pressures and things like that,
right.
and certainly Bortles hasn't taken that next step in his development, it looks like, this year. So, but like you said, their defense is still formidable. I know last week against the Detroit Lions, they only let in like under 20 yards rushing or something like that. So
right.
I'm not to say that Detroit's a running team at all, but still 20 yards rushing is still, nothing to sneeze at or what
right.
have you. But so, I mean, we're going to have our hands full with the defense. But I do like our chances in this game, just for the simple fact that we are at home. We are coming off a win, and we are getting some players back healthy. Although, we did lose a few this week,
right.
Whether in practice or last week in the game. But I do like our chances going forward in this game.
Right. In Jacksonville, they're 2-8, but as I have on the screen, you can see they've been in a lot of tight games this year. They lost to Green Bay in week 1 by 4. They lost to Baltimore by 2. They beat Indy only by 3 points. They won 30-27. They barely beat Chicago after their bye week, 17-16. Another close game in week 9 versus Jacksonville, versus Kansas City. I'm sorry, and Kansas City only won by 5. So even in the last few weeks, they've been in tight games versus Houston. They only lost by 3. They lost by 7 last week to Detroit. So, although they are 2-8, John, they've been in most of these games, whether they won or lost, but they've been in them, right?
Right. They're not getting blown out. I mean, all of these are 1-score games that you're showing here that are highlighted there. So they had they've been in the games. It looks like they've had chances to win those games. I'm not sure how all of them played out at the end. But still, at the end of the day, they had chances to win, and they're not getting blown out. So, um, you know, again, that goes back to my point. It's player horses this week if they're available, because we'll need them, and we can't take any team for granted, because that's when you will get beat.
Right. And a lot of their offensive struggles, it's rooted in, Blake Bortles. Everyone knows that your offense is only as good as your quarterback. If anyone knows that more, it's us. It's the Buffalo fans. So, I mean, he has I've pulled up his numbers from the first 10 games of last year versus this year. And honestly, Jon, they're not that different. If you look at 2015, he's got similar yardage, similar yards per attempt. He's got 20 touchdowns last year, 18 to this year. Similar interception rate. Sacks are actually down this year through 10 games, which was kind of surprising because, from what I've read, Jon, and you mentioned it, their offensive line has struggled.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, and that's surprising. But maybe he's doing more to elude, potential sacks,
right.
and getting the ball rid of the ball a little faster. But like you said, interceptions is up a little. Completion percentage, where is that at there? I can't see
Okay,
that.
so 2015,
Is it
I'll let you know. 2015, his completion percentage was 56.6, and this year it's 60.2. So that's gone up.
Okay, so so he's completing more passes,
Right.
which is good for him. So, but it's still not, in my opinion, what I like to see from a quarterback. Like I said, I need to see 65 and above. Obviously, 63 to 69 is probably where you want your quarterback to be at.
Right.
And he's not there. So, especially after last week, I mean, we have a little bit of momentum. As far as our defensive backs are concerned, coming off last week's game,
Right.
we really need to build on that this week, because as we've talked about it over the last several weeks, that was a piece of the defense that was super struggling. And now
Right.
that they've had a little bit of confidence, we can keep building on that, Eric. That could do wonders for our defense long term.
And I'm glad you mentioned the secondary, because the story of Blake Bortles, to me, it kind of resembles Ronald Darby, because, Blake Bortles had such a great second half last year. In the final 6 games of 2015, he threw 15 touchdowns. So it's almost like Darby, he had such a great year last year, and expectations were so high, and, we've had a letdown. Part of that letdown is your perception, your expectation that the Darbys and even Bortles is going to just take that next step. But I mean, let's face it, last year Bortles was great, in the second half, or in the last 6 games of the year. So going into this year, that the expectation level was high, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. And it's tough for a rookie or a second year guy, it goes back to just having more tape on these guys.
Yeah.
And and these coaches, man, I mean, they spend 20 hours a day watching film, looking for tendencies.
Right.
So now that there's tape on these guys, they're going to get exposed a little bit more. It's how they can combat what the game plan is around them to try to combat that. And like you said, we had such high expectations for Ronald Darby coming into this year that they might have been a little lofty.
Right.
Just for the fact that, he was a rookie last year, and he certainly overachieved as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely.
Especially, as being a second round pick. He was up for consideration for rookie of the year last year. So to have those same types of expectations, I understand you do, but they may not have been, realistic.
Right. And, part of Bortles' game last year, it resembles Tyrod Taylor, because, Bortles last year was one of the best deep passing quarterbacks last year. He had the Robinsons, the Hearns, to stretch the field. And you know what? He excelled at that. And he, like I said, he was one of the best. I mean, take a look at these numbers, Jon. I mean, as a deep passer last season, he threw 10. This is through the first 10 games. So I'm comparing the first 10 games. He had 7 touchdowns in 2015 in his first 10 games.
Wow.
And then this year he's only got 1. And we're talking about deep passing. So that's everything over 20 yards, and you can see that attempts are down from 70 attempts last year through 10 games to 45 deep pass attempts this year. So, And he's only completed 10 out of 45 deep passes this year, John. So I think his struggles and his accuracy and, this season have been down. And you can see the accuracy percentage on those deep passes, John. Last year, 45.7%, which was the seventh highest in the NFL. Or this year,
Mm-hmm.
he's, throwing 26.7% accuracy, which is 23rd. So I think when you look at his overall numbers, they look very similar through the first 10 games. But this year, you can see where he's struggling, John. It's actually deep.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, looking at the numbers last year, I mean, geez, them are great numbers.
Right.
7 touchdowns over 20 yards through the first 10 games is pretty impressive, and his QB rating way up there. So, and looking at it this year, it's near the bottom. So, yeah, there's a huge drop off with the deep passing from this year to last year, and I'm not sure why that is. I mean, he has pretty much the same pieces there for the most part. Was there a coordinator change or something like that? I mean, because that, to me, that seems too substantially different than one year to the next.
I do think that the coaching has something to do with it, and you're right. There was a coordinator change in week 8, between week 8, week 9, and it's a name that we're familiar with, John. It's Nathaniel Hackett, and he was promoted from I think it was QB's coach to the offensive coordinator. And in his first game, it was quite promising when you look at it. In the game versus Kansas City, they had a year high in plays with 75. They put up 449 yards versus a really good Chiefs defense, but they still lost the game.
They only put up 14 points though, with
Right.
449 yards. I mean, they're having a hard time punching the ball in the end zone, it looks like. And I know their running game is lackluster. That's probably why they're struggling, is they can't run the ball at all, Eric. So that's certainly going to help their passing attack.
Right. And, Gus Bradley came out with a quote, a few weeks ago, and he said he went back because they want to evaluate and self-scout their offense and see why he's struggling. And here's a quote from Bradley. Tell me if this sounds familiar, because I think it's just, again, it's just such a parallel to what we deal with Tyrod Taylor on a weekly basis. He goes, we went back, which was Dave Caldwell and himself, and they watched the film in his office on some throws that were made around the league. Let's just look at the misses and see what's taking place, and you see it. So this is what they're asking themselves when they start watching the film. And their conclusion was that a lot of quarterbacks are doing it across the league. So there's truth to that. Don't get me wrong, John, right? There is truth.
Mm-hmm.
But let's face it, in Bortles' third year, they also expected an improvement because they did have they've got weapons, man. They got Hearns, they got Robinson, they got Thomas. They brought in, Yeldon a couple years ago and added a good backup in Ivory. So they have weapons on that offense.
Mm-hmm. They do, and you don't ever hear Julius Thomas's name very often.
No.
He needs to be involved more. And quite frankly, I don't know. Like last year was such a big year for Robinson and Hearns. Maybe that was a fluke.
Right.
I don't know. But you would think coming off a year like that those guys would continue to progress. And I don't know. Are they getting open? Is he missing throws? Is the pressure too much for him to be able to complete these throws?
Right.
That's what you got to ask yourself if you're Jacksonville. And I think when it breaks down to them is something that I'll always go back to, and it's quality coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you may draft a stud at 1, 2, or 3 in the draft, and if you don't have the appropriate and proper guys developing this particular player, his talent alone will only take him so far. And I think that's what's happening to Blake Bortles.
Right,
He's not getting quality coaching.
And that brings me back to Nathaniel Hackett, right? Because prior, the coordinator prior to Hackett was Greg Olson. So the guy that was working hand in hand with the quarterback was Nathaniel Hackett. So I mean, and we know personally that he hasn't really done anything as far as developing quarterbacks, right?
No, I mean he's in my opinion, he's a quality control coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where he should probably be. I'm not kidding, but I want my number 3 overall pick learning to play the pro game through. to be honest with you, if I'm Jacksonville. So it wouldn't surprise me if those coaches are removed from their positions either at the end of the year or maybe at some point during the season. Probably most likely at the end of the season. But they have the weapons on that team to be good. Their defense is formidable. So to be 2-8, especially in that division, I feel is certainly underachieving for them.
Right. And, they promoted Hackett from quarterbacks coach where Bortles was struggling prior to that. So they promote him. So now I don't know exactly who's working with Bortles, during individual time of practice. So I don't know who's actually, if it's still Hackett.
It's probably still Hackett.
It probably still is. But then again, that's, just putting more on Hackett's plate when he couldn't even, I don't want to, no pun intended, he couldn't hack it as a quarterbacks coach, let alone the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Am I right?
Right. Yeah, you're 100% right. And are you putting too much responsibility on an inexperienced and young coach? That's probably what's happening. Because Gus Bradley, we all know, is a great defensive mind, right? He's done good things around the league defensively, and his defense in Jacksonville, like you said, is pretty formidable. So, and that goes back to Eric to what I used to say about Rex Ryan. It's sure you can coach defense, but we didn't bring you as a head coach to just coach the defense. We need we need the whole thing from you, and he needs to go out. If they're going to keep Gus Bradley around, which I'm not opposed to doing that if I'm upper management in Jacksonville, because I do think he's a good head coach, but he needs to bring in some quality. I mean, North Turner's out there now. He retired or he resigned from Minnesota. That might be something that they may want to look at if they want to keep Gus Bradley around next year. Maybe they can bring in someone like that has experience developing quarterbacks. I mean, he's developed Hall of Fame quarterbacks. He's won Super Bowls, so that's something they may want to take a look at and try to, retool that offense coaching staff a little bit.
Right, because I was looking at some clips of Bortles this year, and reading some things on why he possibly is struggling, and I found one interesting from Ron Jaworski, which I don't always agree with Jaworski. I think he's almost he puts a lot of punchline material out there, but listen to this quote, what he said about Blake Bortles. He says, from what he's seen on tape, it's a breakdown in his fundamentals. He has an elongated delivery, the footwork, the poor balance, causing poor accuracy and ball placement. All of that leads me to believe that he's not being coached hard enough. I think you need to coach the quarterback position harder and tougher than any other position on the football field. Most teams do not. They treat the quarterback as a prima donna. They let him get away with way too much, and they don't coach him hard enough. I mean, to me, that almost rings true when you watch some of the film of Bortles, because, coming from a guy that's played in this league and, played quarterback, the quarterback position, he knows what he's looking at on film. And again, some of his stuff I believe is punchline material. But I mean, you could see Bortles is struggling because I feel like he's pressing it right now, John. I mean, look, he's trying to get the ball deep here to Robinson, and that guy's bracketed. Why are you throwing to him? Look, that guy's sitting in the flats.
Right.
That's coaching, decision making. He should know that this guy is covered. Take the easy play, right?
Yeah, and I mean, he's not even nowhere near open. And so to not take that check down, because that's an easy first down, it looks like, if he does take the check down. And that's all you can ask for as a first down. You live to see another day, and he is pressing. And it goes back to my point a few weeks ago with Jim Harbaugh. That man coaches the hell out of his quarterbacks. I mean, like, the way these guys, like I said, just come out of their drops, hand the ball off, for Christ's sake. Just the way, they sit in the pocket and get rid of it. I mean, you have to coach your quarterback hard. And I agree with Jaws that you can't let these guys get away with stuff and let them, dictate what they're going to do. You got to beat them up in practice, so to speak, as far as the coaching is concerned. So you can instill this in their brains that this is the way we want it done. This is the way it's going to be successful to be done. And make sure it's executed. And for Blake, he's probably not getting that. I bet you, 2/3 of the QBs in the league aren't getting that kind of coaching.
Right.
And it's really it's a huge point of contention with me is the development of quarterbacks, and it's based around of who is actually developing these quarterbacks.
Right.
David Lee, Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, come on, guys. What are you expecting from these quarterbacks?
Right. And his accuracy has been off this season. And I watched a clip of Hackett today. I'm not sure exactly when it was taped, but he was discussing Bortles and what he sees in Bortles and his development. And what he had mentioned that is Bortles knows where he needs to go with the ball, but it's almost as if he gets antsy and he presses it and almost is too hyped for the play. And I mean, this is an easy pass, and look at the location of it. It's behind him. He throws that a little ahead of him. I see these defenders, breaking on the ball, but you got to give your player a chance to make a play with the ball. I mean, that's just a bad throw.
He needs to drill that. I mean, look at the way he kind of willy-nilly throws that. He needs to step up and deliver that pass. Like, I'm not seeing.
Yeah, he's got a pocket. This is an easy pitch and catch.
You can't ask for more than that, right? And to have that as not a completion is unacceptable. And then not only, I think was that an interception? So yeah, so yeah, that's unacceptable.
Here, I mean, this is the play. I think this is the actual play from the all-22. So I mean, this is towards the end of the game. And so I mean, this is what you're expecting. They're giving you the underneath stuff. How can you not complete that pass? You know what I'm saying? And yeah, it is.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Or and that ended the game, I believe. So
end of the game.
Yeah, I mean that to me I didn't really see too much wrong on film as far as technique, but I didn't watch as much film as I'm sure Jaws has. And there it is again. It's just behind him. Give me, the ball placement is the key to that, and that's the key to any quarterback in this league is the ball placement and accuracy, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you got an accurate quarterback, you got a chance. And a lot of the accuracy comes from good fundamentals and footwork and technique. So, maybe his feet, his footwork and his technique, maybe it isn't quite what it needs to be, moving forward. So, I just want to see how this play rolls out. I mean, is he?
I saw that there's some bad QB play here fundamentally on this play because hopefully I have the tight camera angle where you could see it. But
totally coaching, Eric, 100% coaching. I'm not. I'm gonna put a little bit of. I'll say 95% of this is just bad coaching from the quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator because Blake Bortles should at this point in his career be better than he is right now, and especially coming off a pretty good year last year.
Right. And see what I saw on this play, and it's probably not as visible from this angle, but he does a good job with his eyes. Eyes are up, finding the safeties, and then he does come to it's a slant route. But right here, if you can really see it, he's flat-footed. That's not where you want to throw from. And he does, he gets rid of it. He's got the arm strength to overcome that. But if you look at it's hard to see because it's blurry, but the ball placement's high. And it gets tipped and intercepted and returned for a touchdown. So I'll go back to the all-22 angle because you can see it better from there. Is the ball placement's bad. Watch his back foot. Boom, he's on his back foot. That's not where you want to be throwing from, right? You want to be on your toes. You want to keep, there are different ways of coaching, but you want him on his toes so he can throw at any given moment. But he has the arm strength to overcome it. Gets the ball off, but look where the receiver is reaching. He's reaching up for that. That's a high throw.
Yeah.
So
and that needs to be they need to complete that, and that was probably the difference in the game right there. That play,
right? So there are little things that need to be tweaked, and I do think it comes back to coaching in this regard, just because, I mean, we've seen it. Just because we've seen the type of coach that Hackett is, I'd have to still say that our perception of Hackett is still the same, in Jacksonville as it was in Buffalo. Wouldn't you agree?
For sure, 100%. And not to say that he can't develop being a good coach,
right?
Or maybe a McDaniels type of coordinator, but it didn't work here. It hasn't worked in Jacksonville so far yet. So it's coaching, and they need to bring in to invest in a player that high in the draft at that position, it's almost doing yourself a disservice by not having the appropriate coaching behind him to develop him. And that's what they're lacking.
Right. And so we're going to shift gears here. We only got a few more minutes left. We're going to shift gears to the defense. And you had mentioned Gus Bradley and what he's done on defense. And as we mentioned before, they're the 7th ranked defense in the league. And they play, that Seattle defense where they have, a single high safety. And, with this team, the thing I noticed on film is that they are fast. They drafted a lot of young players, have inserted a lot of young players, including, Jalen Ramsey, Miles Jack, Yannick Ngakoue, Melvin Fowler from a couple of years ago. So they have a fast defense, Jon. And, it's one that has, Jonathan Cyprien, who's one of my favorite safeties to watch in the league. And he plays a lot in the box, a la Cam Chancellor. And they rely on their front four, right? I mean, they brought in Malik Jackson on a big contract from Denver, and this year he's, piled up 32 total pressures. The rookie Ngakoue from Maryland, who I really like coming out of the draft, has 29 total pressures, and Fowler's have been pitching 22. So they're getting pressure from the interior defenders and from the edge rushers, which, again, it mimics what Seattle does on defense.
And which I think, plays to our favor because there's such a fast defense that with the particular, it's a lot of misdirections and things like that. So we certainly have them over pursue and, obviously, specifically in the run game and, maybe find some holes that way because they're young. It's a younger defense. They're fast and they play fast. So, they're trying to diagnose quickly. And sometimes when you do that, especially with the counters and the different misdirection plays, you can get gashed. And I think that's going to be the key to the game for us on the ground.
Right. And they do. I think that's the way we're going to attack it. Obviously, we're going to have to run the ball because they want to keep you in those 3rd and long situations so they can, create havoc with their front. And they're so fast. They run a lot of twists. And they don't blitz a lot. You see, there's some really nice. These guys are just rushing off the edge, but then you'll see nice set of twists over here that they're running, and it just creates so much pressure. And I think our advantage is Tyrod Taylor. He can break the pocket, and we saw what he did versus Seattle. So I do like our matchup in that front. But you saw how bad, the right side of our line, specifically Jordan Mills, played against that type of edge rusher of Cliff Averill, and they have those kind of speed rushers off the edge here, Jon.
Right, and a big thing to keep your eye on is going to be that Malik Jackson, Jordan Mills matchup. We're going to have some sort of a inline blocker, whether it's O'Leary or Clay or one of the backs chipping and helping out there because he hasn't been able to hold up against some of these better pass rushers. And Malik Jackson's more of a, he's just a monster. He's not going to necessarily beat you with speed, but he comes with power and he's a big body and he plays well within his frame.
Right.
So we're certainly going to have to spend some extra time with him and maybe game plan a little bit around Jackson and, give some help to Mills if he is indeed the starter this week.
Right. And when you watch this film, you see wide 9 looks and, Seattle used that a lot versus us, and Mills did, he struggled that game. Let's be honest about it. He struggled. I think he gave up 9 total pressures. That's, an outrageous amount. So, that they're going to attack us off the edge because our interior blockers, have been decent this year, Richie and Miller. But, of course, now, Groy at center. So that interior is also vulnerable. And they do have the pass rushers to attack inside and outside. And you can see it here. But Cyprien, a guy that I love, they use him in the box slot. You see him motion here. And he's in the box slot. He's just tenacious. He's a big guy, but has agility. You see him, he over pursues, but he has that speed and agility to plant right back with Theo Riddick and still make the tackle for a stop. I think they only gained 2 or 3 yards on this play.
Yeah, he's definitely I don't want to call him a Bob Sanders type player, but he's pretty damn close to that. And he's just everywhere on the field, Eric. I mean, that guy can hit. He'll hit you too. He's not afraid to hit somebody, and that's why they keep him in the box a lot. Home the ball too. So
Right.
their defense has playmakers. Their whole team has playmakers. So to be 2-8, is kind of a little shocking to me. So we cannot take this game for granted. We have to game plan accordingly, and specifically around, our run game is where we make our hay, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we're gonna. If we're not running the ball, we're probably not gonna win that game.
No doubt.
So I like to see a lot of draw plays this week. I like to see a lot of plays, a lot of counters, of course, the usual stuff we see.
Right.
I mean, especially against that Y9, I feel like anything up the middle with the run, you got some room there.
Right.
But it's gonna be a tough game. I mean, we're favored by, I believe, 10 points to win this game, if I'm not
Really?
mistaken. The last time I looked at the line,
Wow.
it's up there. So I don't really know why or how, but we'll see. We'll see.
Definitely. And, it is going to predicate on us staying, in good down and distances and in not letting them just pin their ears back, because that's where we're going to get in trouble as an offense, especially if we don't have Robert Woods or if we don't have Sammy Watkins. I mean, who's your threat then? I mean, it's Charles Clay hasn't done enough to be warranted a number one threat right now on offense. So,
No.
and the matchups there, I do think that Tyrod and the offense can put up numbers still on Jacksonville's defense. That's not the problem, but you have to do it in our fashion. And I think that's one thing that Anthony Lynn has done well this year is, stick to the script, stick to what's been working, and and just keep trucking. Don't go outside of the norm, because our offense is not consistent enough to do that, to take those risks,
Yeah, and we can't beat ourselves either, though, Eric.
Right.
Rewatching the game last week. I watched it again on Monday or Tuesday, and God, we had like 10 penalties in like the first half or something crazy like that, and we fortunately we were able to overcome that, but we're not going to be able to do that on a week to week basis. So that's a thing that we got to get our discipline under control, because again, a team that we supposedly should beat, we could lose to if we beat ourselves.
There's no doubt about it. Of course, yeah. Protect the ball. Again, stick to the run game and stick to the script on both sides, because Jacksonville they're one of those teams that, yeah, they're struggling. Yeah, they've been in a lot of tight games, but they're also pressing. And I don't think that's one thing our team hasn't really done on either side of the ball is, they haven't been pressing it much. And it's very conservative, and it's we do harp on Taylor not throwing the ball down the field a lot of times, missing Clay in last week's game. But when it comes down to it, yeah, he is protecting the ball, and we're still in games. And you know what, Jacksonville isn't. They're turning it over. That's part of Bortles' problem is he's forcing it, he's pressing it, and he is throwing more interceptions this year. So let them make the mistakes. And I think that's what our team's done well this year, and I think they'll stick to that, especially at home.
Yeah, and hopefully our fans come out this week and really make a difference. The weather's, it's not Florida up here. We know that. So there's definitely going to be probably a little, rain, maybe a little snow. It's going to be colder. So, we'll see how that plays into the game. But, we let them make the mistakes. Correct.
Right.
We do a good job of protecting the ball for the most part. I mean, I don't see a lot of interceptions per game. We don't fumble the ball very often. So if we continue with that formula, then yes, we should win this game just based off that alone.
Well, we're a few days away. It's Thursday right now, Thanksgiving. Jon, thank you for joining me on Thanksgiving. I know you got a busy day ahead. Enjoy football today, man. Tell the family I said hello, and miss you guys. All right, man?
All right, man. Take care.
All right, see ya.